today we start the final presentations. We have 7 teams presenting their progress, their results, their solutions for DAO reward systems. And a quick look at the agenda is we're going to introduce, talk a little bit about the program, give you a general overview, and right after we are starting final presentations and the moment we are all waiting for. So welcome everyone. We have 41 participants already in the call and more to come, I believe, because presenters are not all here yet. And we would like to start with a common practice of praise. So I think Angela would like to take the lead on here.
Yeah, sure. There are a lot of people to be praised, and yeah, they all should be mentioned. So first of all, we have our partners, the partners who enabled this program, the partners who, if you skip to the next slide, Penny, the partners who have been case partners. So Token Engineering Commons being a case partner, OceanDAO being a case partner, and NEAR. So these communities have been connected to this program in a sense. We had access to their data for analytics. We had access to their stakeholders, how they organize grants or contribution rewards. And this is certainly a necessary fundament to build any reward systems. Then the Governauts and DAOists have been supporting us in our program at the Assemblage. This range of talks also available on YouTube about DAO reward systems we had in December, and Gnosis and Boson protocol also supported us to enable this program. So thanks to our partners. And Patti, you'll continue with more praise.
Hey, yes, I have to give a special round of praise to our mentors who have proved and to be so engaged and so encouraging to all the participants and wanting to see them learn, wanting to help, wanting to assist, and providing us with sometimes personal stories to help us understand something, and sometimes making a technical or a very complex knowledge, make it look like it's easy. So I praise all of the mentors first, and of course all of the participants. Here we have all the teams for part 3. So everyone that's working and hopefully presenting today is listed here, and I praise you guys for keeping up with a program of 3 months, even despite the holidays, the holiday break, even with everything that's going on. Thank you for keeping up with us and for all the engagements in all the 20, this is a 26th session. So thank you all. We've always had everyone super active. So yes, thank you guys. Now I think we can start a quick overview on what the program was about. So why this is such a big event. We have 3 months of 34 months actually of program. Part 1, we had technical analysis and measurements of what would be health in DAO systems. And then we had the awesome assemblage, a day of workshops, and this was open to public, and we hosted a full day with many people, not only speaking but also participating, and it was a very big day. And now we are seeing today the solutions that have been working on since the beginning of January, with mechanisms and innovations that could be applied in the 3 cases that we offered participants to explore and study. So this is a general overview on the timeline. And now I would like to ask Andrew if you want to share some thoughts. I think, Angela, is there another slide?
This is the
This is the okay.
Oh, we need the images.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. I'm really pleased to get to talk to you. Really pleased to see all of you. And I have a lot of research experience, I guess. I've gone through graduate school and I've led several teams of undergraduate research students at university. And this is my third TE Academy research group, although it's my first as a mentor. And I just want to say what a wonderful experience it has been for me. How proud and impressed I am by everyone's work, both the people who are presenting today and the people who engaged early on but may not have gone through the completion of the program. It's been amazing to see the different perspectives, the different techniques, the relationships that we've built. I think it's kind of interesting because I love this quote by Hamming from, he says, "The purpose of computation is not numbers, but it is insight." And it's very easy to focus on the one experiment or program or theorem or simulation that we came out with. But research is really an experience. Research is something we do, and we have more than just the knowledge that we gained. I think it's so awesome. The goal of research is to know something that we didn't know before. And there's so many things that we're going to see today that we know that we did not know 15 weeks ago. But also, there are things that are difficult to put on paper or on a screen that we have built. Senses of community. We've wrestled with very difficult questions. And in the process, we have results that won't be able to show up on a computer screen today, but that are still very real. It's very much interesting to me that the topic of this research program was reward systems in communities. And I want to thank all of the communities, all of the DAOs that provided their expertise, their data, and their help in understanding their communities. And we have built a community as well of our own in this research group. So in the process of studying reward systems in communities, we have also built a reward system in a community. And I hope that the rewards that we feel don't end today, but continue as we continue to do this research. This is just the starting point. We've raised a lot of questions and we've answered some of them, but we have a research program here that will continue for years. So I just want to thank you all again for the opportunity to be part of this. This is by far the largest research group I've ever been a part of. And it's one of the longest running research groups I've ever been a part of. And I would say it's been one of the most impressive research groups I've ever been a part of. And I just have tremendous gratitude to all of you. Thank you.
Idea. You're absolutely right. And I don't.
So much, Andrew, for the very kind and precise words that say. Yeah, it's been a journey, and I would like to, before we start the final presentations, to share a reminder, as I have been sharing reminders every session almost. We have, after final presentations, a few follow-up sessions. So now that you participants are experts in DAO reward systems, we have many interested folks wanting to hear from you. So calendar invites have already been sent. We had an update, a recent update today of the NEAR demo day. It was scheduled for tomorrow, but then it's now for next week. So this is a quick update. We'll have 2 workshops already, and one with OceanDAO, one with the TAC, and the demo day with NEAR. More information is going to be shared in the calendar invites and via Discord. And we are going to have also a Gnosis Zodiac workshop or talk. We are still defining, but please stay tuned. We want to see and take the results and presentations you have been working on to more than just until here, until today. So this is it. And now I think we can start with final presentations. This is a quick look on the team's organization. We are going to start with Darren, Ziwe, and Phil on the Triviality of SputnikDAO. So guys, if you want to start, I can stop sharing my screen and you can begin.
While you get ready, some words as an introduction for everyone who hasn't been taking part in throughout this whole 3-month program. So you'll now see 3 presentations with models and simulations. So token engineering is about the design, verification, optimization of cryptoeconomic systems. And one of the tools we use are models. So we build a model of the crypto economy that we envision and then run simulations to see what happens. And that's the interesting thing here. And I'm sure a development that will be very relevant for the DAOs in the future, coming months and years, is what happened in the teams. Because it turns out that today requirements engineering is pretty heavy for DAOs because they are moving fast. They are evolving while we try to build a model of it. And so it's hard and challenging to come up with something generalizable. So you see now, and all the teams made a very smart move. So they built a model that is generally applicable to any DAO. So any DAO would be able to build on that. However, at very important questions, for example, how would you define impact if you would like to reward impact? This is a matter of any DAO's very particular definition. And I'm pretty sure, and I would hope that we'll see a development where DAOs establish their own work streams, sub-DAOs to work on the definition of policies, of the assumptions that should be included in a model, and then run their own simulations and hopefully can build on the models that the teams have built in the process of this research initiative. All right, so this stage is yours. Shiwei, Darren, and Phil. Uncommon Commons, the first presentation.
Thank you, Angela, and hello, everyone. I'm happy to introduce our team, the Uncommons Commons. We're an unlikely group, but we're trying to cultivate the spirit of the commons in our research here. And so we've got Zhiwei, we've got myself, Darren, and we've got Phil here. And yep, kind of from all over the world here. Me and Zhiwei are in North America, Phil is in Europe. And yep, next slide, please. So yeah, our focus is on the near ecosystem of SputnikDAO. SputnikDAO is, it's a DAO platform. It's a fractal DAO system, which is a hub for collaboration and coordination of shared goals within the near ecosystem. And so SputnikDAO, this ecosystem of DAOs, it's about a year old now. So it's relatively new, but it's a year old and it's come a long way. And, you know, Near has created this amazing system for launching a DAO and for really easily spinning up a DAO, and they have this system for submitting proposals and getting funding, and it's all really great. And then our focus is to just build on this foundation to think about ways of not just launching a DAO, but how can we make DAOs thrive, and what does it mean for the whole ecosystem to be healthy, and what kind of metrics can we look for, and then how do we build a model and come up with hypotheses and test them with simulations. And so, yeah, like how can NEAR improve the allocation of funds? And that was like a big question for us. And what types of rewards can we introduce, both monetarily with the grants program, but also thinking about rewarding in other ways, and thinking about other types of not just looking at like financial impact, but also like just kind of generic impact, kind of like what Angela was saying. Like we kind of tried to make this applicable to really any DAO, and really allow the specific DAO to come up for themselves with what they deem as like impactful, and then they could then kind of use this to kind of map onto that. So next slide, please. So we built a digital twin of our model, and basically the idea was to kind of model the system that we want to test. And we did this with tools like CAD, with like Markov chains, and we looked at the life cycle of like individual DAOs. So we would kind of come up with a hypothesis for like, what if a DAO looked like this, if it had this amount of initial funding, if it kind of had this cost model and this income model, and is making this impact, and then what would the life cycle of this DAO be from like the beginning to the end, whether it's like sustainable long term, or if it kind of dwindles out. And then we also looked at the kind of more systemic level. So we would run, for example, with CAD, you can look at kind of more systemic metrics, and so that was important too. So we focused kind of on like the micro level of like individual DAOs, but then also at kind of the macro level of like the system health metrics. And we introduced what we call graduated impact-based rewards in order to foster diversity and support growth of the DAOs and create a healthy ecosystem. And now I'll pass it to Zhu Wei, who has done an amazing job with the simulations.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So I'll directly go to the Jupyter notebook of our simulation models. So we start with this life cycle or life path, because sometimes there's no cycle of a DAO. And although we talk about impact, which could be a general term, but to start with a simpler model, we focus on the economic impact, which will be measured by the NEAR dollars, NEAR coins. And we consider for each DAO, they have their own model characterizing their own life trajectory. So at each time step, there will be a cost and income for this DAO model. And also for most DAOs, probably they won't have a lot of income, but their major, at least at the beginning, are mainly sustained by the funding from NEAR. So that's a major source of their treasury. So all the three factors of cost, income, and NEAR funds contribute to this DAO's treasury, and each time step it evolves, and we see overall how this DAO performs. And all these components are flexibly defined by all the model parameters, which I will skip, and just start to show you some examples. First, let's see a small DAO that can be sustained by NEAR fund. So here is the trajectory of their treasury, and each simulation we conceptualize as a month. So at each month, they start with the initial treasury of 2. The unit of the money is not so critical here. We just choose an arbitrary unit. So they start, and there's some increase and there's some decrease. And so they're in generally fluctuating as the time goes and sustaining pretty well. And here we break down of each time step and the actual mechanism of their life. So the blue purplish line is the cost of running this DAO, including like compensations for people, for projects, for proposals, all the cost you can think of that the DAO gives out to individuals' wallet. And the cost is generally higher fluctuating than the red line, which is the income. So income we conceptualize as some funding they attracted from external source like other individuals. So if there's no funding from the near, which is this green line, a consistent funding at each month, the DAO wouldn't have been survived. But because this funding from near just happened to be able to catch up the gap between the cost and the income, this DAO is able to sustain for like 12 months. Then of course we can imagine an example where a DAO failed to sustain. So here we define failing as the treasury of the DAO gets to 0 or below 0. Then this DAO just fails in our model definition. And you can see this DAO at the month 8, they fail, treasury got to 0. And this is because we can see again, the cost is higher than their income, and because of some noise in this simulation that we included in the model, there will be noisy fluctuation for their income and cost. So this is an unfortunate noise that their cost just goes up and their income actually goes down in this few months, and this DAO just depletes its treasury and fail. A third story is a DAO with a big growth. So before we see this zigzagging up and down pattern, but this DAO has a steady increase of their treasury. And if we break down to the monthly progress, we can see they start low but have a quick increase of both cost and income, and to the point that the funding from near is so small that we can ignore it. But mainly they're sustaining by themselves. So these are just some simple examples of a DAO that determined by the life path functions of their income and cost. And now what if we put together 100 DAOs to simulate this ecosystem? So here we define this group of DAOs of 30% easily fail, 60% sustained, but sustain pretty well, but not necessarily grow very big, and 10% that actually we can see great success. Now they grow a lot. Actually, I should be more careful. Success doesn't mean you have to grow a lot. Here we just mean financially they have growing a lot. And then how do we measure the system health? First thing is the number of active DAOs. So we start with a simulation of 100 DAOs. And then as time goes, there's some DAO dies out, plateau, then a few more DAO dies out. And so in general, like in the end, there's 73 DAOs left. So this is agrees with our initial assumption, like around 30% of DAO fail. And what about the total transaction happen at each time? So here, total transaction is defined as the total cost and income of each DAO. And then we aggregate all the DAOs that are alive. So this is a measure of system transaction activity, because every transaction happens on the SputnikDAO platform, they're using the Near wallet, which is overall beneficial to the Near ecosystem. And every transaction, either cost or income, it's someone's benefiting from this. So we just add them all up and ask about what's the overall total transaction of the ecosystem at each time step as a measurement of the ecosystem activity. And here we see start low and there's some fluctuation, some DAOs die, so there will be sometimes less activity, but because there are a few DAOs that have big growth, as we assume, then we see the overall system experience a growth of the total transaction and reach at a higher level at the end of 2 years, 24 time steps. And finally, one more thing we want to demonstrate is the diversity of the system as a metrics. So for example, we want to see that the total transaction at the end, there are a few DAOs that have a substantial portion of total transaction. Then there are tons of other DAOs that are much smaller, but still maintain with smaller economic activities. So this is to show that this system has both small fish and big whales as a metrics of diversity. And also we can see the total treasury for each DAO. And here's the histogram that it's a sort of a long tail distribution that most DAOs have relatively small treasury, but then there are a few DAOs that have really large treasury. And now we come to the leak policy. So before we're assuming the Near platform is using a very simple strategy of just giving all the DAOs same amount of money and same amount at every time step every month. So that's the easiest way, but there are better ways. So here's an example where we might need Near to give some more consideration of how they fund DAOs. So we see this DAO that is start low, but then both their cost and their income, so the blue and red lines, are increasing. So that they're showing pretty impressive growth. But because at this time step, there's some fluctuation and their income dropped more than their cost, this DAO can actually not sustain. And if you look at this process of growth, here our model tried to capture some real world cruelty here that the cost always grows faster than the income. So they've been depleting their treasury this whole time until one point they cannot sustain. But this is a DAO with such a promising future, so can Near do something about it? So here we assume a league policy where every DAO start with league 1. That's the entrance DAO that they receive this steady amount. But if they show a growth, meaning their income growth has continued to, their income has continued to show an increase, which is not necessarily the best real world policy, but here it says model simplification. We're just saying their income is showing this upward trend for continuously 4 months. Then this DAO will be promoted to League 2, which means they will be qualified for some more bigger amount of funding when they need it, when they having trouble surviving. And if we implement that policy, here we can run the overall system simulation again. And let's just directly contrast the simulation with or without the leak policy. So here is the first matrix of number of DAOs. And we see both starting from 100 DAOs, then the blue line of the previous policy drops faster, yet the red line with the leak policy did successfully save some DAOs from dying. So the overall, there's more active DAOs remaining towards the end, as shown by the red line. And we're asking, what if is it just because NEAR is pouring more money from NEAR Foundation to sustain more? Is that actually a sustainable growth for the whole ecosystem? And here we can see, actually the more funding goes out to contribute to more transaction per step, as shown in the red line compared to the blue line. And overall, this increase of transaction, platform-wise transaction, is much bigger than the amount of money that NEAR need to give out, which is shown by the purple and green line at the bottom of the graph, which is like quite close. So this is like an effective policy that NEAR can use to generate much greater economic system activity with very minimal cost from the NEAR Foundation. And all we've been talking about is financial impact. And in the final stage, I'm going to show a short preview of how this can be extended to non-financial impact. So like here, I'm adding one more metrics for each DAO of how much impact they generate. And of course, their impact can be its own thing or can be related to cost and income, but it's not necessary. And here for a simple simulation, I'm assuming each DAO has a basic level of impact that is determined by the DAO itself. And with some growth, financial growth, their impact can grow, but it's not necessarily gonna override their actual impact. So imagine there's some smaller DAOs that just don't have so much monetary transaction, but they're doing something that is really, really meaningful to the whole community. And that's where this model assumption comes from. And with the similar simulation mechanism and defining the impact function, we can also simulate the growth of impact of an example DAO. And then for the overall system-wide metrics of this impact, one thing here we plot is DAO's impact versus their transaction size, so their financial impact, let's say. And here we can see that although the bigger DAOs, bigger transaction have bigger impact, there are some smaller DAOs that doesn't have so much monetary activity, but still their impact is pretty high, like comparable to those big DAOs. So that's one check that we would suggest for any DAO platform that they actually implement this impact metrics to see that if this impact is actually not strictly correlated with their economic size. And with our current policy that has no regard of how to incentivize more impact, we can see as more DAOs dies down, there's a great dip of the overall system impact. It recovers a bit, but still not as before, meaning the system should have some reward mechanism for funding the DAOs that are economically failing but has good impact. And that's relates to a previous simulation we did, but I'm gonna skip here in the final presentation. And give the stage back to the slides. Do we have a few more minutes, Phil?
Yeah, I hope so. But actually, this slide is related. Yeah, please go to the next one. So just a few words regarding the TE journey. So as a reminder, the question we started with was how can we improve funding allocation to better support its ecosystem? And one thing that struck us was that there were no feedback loops between proposals and impactful work. So that's why we worked on this idea of impact and measuring impact, and so that we could think of how to reward the most impactful initiatives. And as actually Angela was mentioning it at the beginning, we started to question what is impact and how it can be assessed. And we considered the quantitative versus qualitative impact, financial versus non-financial impact, or internal or external. And we could find examples of this, of these different types in existing projects on NEAR, because it's such a diversified and broad environment. And depending on the type of impact, the way to assess it varies. So we thought of using objective measurements, like the ability to generate cash flow, like it was shown in the model, or the number of transactions with other DAOs. But we also thought of using subjective evaluations through committees or like the praise system at TE Commons. And as we drafted diagrams and specs for some of these models, we realized that we should start simple and hide a lot of details in black boxes. And so we selected the number of DAOs, the number of transactions, and the level of funding as the core health metrics for the sake of simplicity. And eventually, we did actually 2 models, but I could see that in the last version, they're reunited. So the one on the impact that is non-monetary, and the one that is based on the economic impact that draws from data intuitively taken from VC-backed startup comparables. And I will end on that. Using such comparables was a way to create a substitute for the real world data that we were missing, because everything is new with NEAR and in general with DAO ecosystem. So we needed some comparables. That's why we started to think of things like leagues that sort of mimic the growth stages of funded firms. And with that, we can go to the last slide. Yeah, maybe we're out of time.
Yeah, but you can just wrap it.
Yeah, so, okay, so I won't comment here. The idea was we just give one last thought, each of us. So maybe I'll keep mine just as it display here. Everything simple is false and everything complex is unusable. So it's a quote by Paul Weller, it's not mine, but I think that it was very interesting with respect to models. I thought initially that we were going to build predictive models, and at the end of the day, I found the models were especially useful as tools for creative thought, more than really to predict anything, at least in the context of this exercise. And Darren, maybe you want to leave something?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that I think I just learned that feedback loops are so important, like when you're like within your own models, but then also like between like your simulation and the real world, being able to kind of reflect and get that feedback from the real world back into your models and have that like flow of information and insight like feeding back in, I think is really important.
And my biggest learning is just impressed how everyone in the Uncommon Common is so committed and helpful throughout this long 3-month journey with no reward. There must be some other mysterious mechanism we haven't modeled.
Thank you, everyone. That's it. Okay. Thank you guys for the presentation. It was great. And we are with time-wise, we have space for one quick question. If someone wants to raise their hands, and we will see it here. If not, then we are going to move on to the following presentation. Okay, so next presentation. Let me open it here. We have funding policy and network health from 3 Dots. Are you there, Tim?
Yes, we are here.
Thanks. You have 15 minutes, please, and 5 for questions later.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna pull up the slides unless someone else wants to do it.
Patty or Thomas?
No worries.
Okay, so I'm happy to introduce the second team working on the SputnikDAO data and the near DAO ecosystem. And in the initial meeting, we found the name 3 dots because we have been 3 persons in the room, and somehow we needed to find a way to connect with each other before we could dive into the research task. So that's why the name. And so I will just give with the second slide, I would like to give a quick overview about the talk. So basically what we will present as our result is, I like to call it a workbench, but in Twitter now the quite nice name, a general purpose model to test funding policies for the NEAR ecosystem, or in general for ecosystem health, that is based on properties of a graph, in particular of a network X graph object, which is the framework we use. So I will quickly introduce the team members, then which is Thomas, who will present who basically built the CatCat model in Python code, and myself, Rodolfo, who will give some insights from the interviews we did together with and Shadi. In the next slide.
I can take it from here.
Yes, you can follow up from here.
So awesome. So essentially, we had the case study, and we tried to apply this framework now of the different hypotheses. And so we laid out the different hypotheses that we observed, or like that we came up with. And one of them is, or like the first one was, does the NEAR ecosystem have a decentralized funding structure? And this is something we tried to answer in our exploratory data analysis, or in the beginning. Then later on, and this is really where the model hopefully is useful, or you will see if it's useful, is essentially is aiming to maximize network health, and we define network health in this context as network density. Does this ensure long-term stability in the system for longer than 5 years? And the third, and I think this is really where our model may be really, or may be useful, is whether policies of funding on nodes. So nodes are hub nodes, which are essentially in the network, a node where many other nodes in the network connect to, better at maximizing network health, defined as density, than broken nodes. So broken nodes are nodes which connect the separate parts of the network, so things that wouldn't be as well connected. And in additional, we leveraged interviews, as Thorsten mentioned, which really provided a lot of context and also inspired the hypothesis in the ecosystem, as well as inform future research areas. And definitely here, special thanks to James, Andrew, Jordan, Chloe, David, and Alexander for their time and for generously offering the time. So with having said this, just a brief note before starting the model walkthrough. I think it's quite helpful to see the data that we received from the ecosystem. And all I really want you to take away from the slide is we have proposal data. So data where we see who has initiated the proposal and who was the target of this proposal. And here you see a different ID for this proposal and in context of what DAO was created. And we have a timestamp, and there's some additional voting information, which was for the purpose of our model not too relevant. And yeah, without further ado, let's switch to the CatCat model. I believe it's this one here, if I got it right. This one. So I think it's this one. I should have checked beforehand, but okay, 1 second. But let's just scroll to the top. So, okay. So to provide again a little bit of context, so what there was a article some while ago that defined a healthy DAO as these 3 things. And to really say where do we focus on by looking at, for instance, a network X object and on the data that we've gotten, it's at best we focus here on a healthy community. And even there, you could argue we focus on a really small subset. So it's important to see this model in that context. It is not a magical tool that can answer anything. And how we imagine the model, or how we try to conceptualize this model to imitate the near ecosystem, is that we have a pool of contributors who invent proposals, which then are funded by a funding pool. And this is a general funding pool. This can be external capitals, can also be the new ecosystem, just the funding that is available in the ecosystem, which then leads to projects. And these projects form different connections between the different nodes, which would then improve network healthiness. And this feeds back to attracting new contributors and new funding, which again flows back. And having said all this, just to highlight again, and I think I'm actually in the wrong file, so apologies for that. So having said this, there is, we defined network density as, okay, sorry. Just having said this is like brokers is network centrality, and hubs are degree centrality. And based on this, we assign a score to the proposer node, which then is more likely to receive funding given the score is high. So there's an element of allocating funding based on the scoring. And how our model works is we have essentially, just scrolling down a bit, and that's the only part of the code that I will show you. So we have first the state variables, and then, as Torf mentioned, there's this workbench. So we have different definitions for the scoring criteria. Here we're going to use the hub scoring criteria and the scoring criteria for the brokers. And then we have different measures of network health, but for this purpose of the simulation, we took network density. But you can plug and play with them. We put this all together in the model parameters. So we took a fixed invention rate, a funding payout rate per epoch, which shows you how much funding is distributed. The invention rate is how many proposals are generated per epoch based on the pool of contributors. And here we have our definition, which is fixed. And here we have 2 different scoring criteria, first hubs and then brokers. And now if we look at the results, you will see they quite shocking a little bit. So, well, not shocking, but
to say we have 5 minutes for you.
Sure.
Just
No, that's fine. That's fine. So all we want to see here, there's actually two insights that we generated. So firstly, the what we see is that it doesn't lead to a stable outcome, and network health seems to spike for whatever reason, and then crashes, and the system is essentially failed or collapsed. So what can we, and this is the same case for the for the hubs. Eventually you have the spike, and we run these simulations a couple of times, and there's usually not a big difference between them. So we obviously asked, like, so this would answer for hypothesis 3, which was, does one perform better as the others? The answer is not really, to be honest, or it's unconclusive, is rather the honest answer. But what we did see is, or what we did learn, and I actually like Dr. P's quote in the beginning that he mentioned a lot, is that through the process we learned something about the network density, which essentially by how with new contributors coming in and consistently coming in a short period of time, they also have to be connected to the remaining network. Otherwise, how the network density is captured, the score will dilute quite rapidly, which you see then in these crashes. So the model doesn't seem to handle a large influx of contributors, and it then crashes. So this raises two questions. Maybe the density is not the best practice or the best measure, or it could also mean maybe we need to make sure in real world as well as in our model to connect the node to the existing network. And without taking over the rest of the presentation, we'll switch back to the presentation and hand it over to Thorsten again, or to Thorsten again to go over the T journey. I rushed you a little bit, but I think this is in the interest of time.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, some words about how we arrived there and how we basically try to deal with this new field that was at least new to me, the token engineering. So it was important for all the team members first to build some understanding of the system and to read a lot of available material, forum posts or white papers, and also conducting the interviews and talk to community leaders and talk to them about their specific viewpoints or problems or questions they had. That this was incredibly helpful to in the first phase before we even started to define our research question or think about modeling at all. And then in the second phase, we used some tools from the CatCat bootcamp that basically not only teaches you how to build a model using software, but also gives you an engineering process at hand that we in the beginning tried to follow. We started to map, to model the state variables, the system parameters, and the policy function. And then we started thinking how the state in this near ecosystem changes while the simulation is running. And our idea was that, for example, if a user wants to use our model, he or she can use it to manipulate model parameters and simulate the ecosystem, and then come up with an optimal funding allocation policy for the ecosystem that the user, the simulator, wants to build. Then we started using again several iterations of the model. In our case, the state of the model is not stored in a single object, but is basically distributed between many graph nodes. And we had to fine-tune and change a lot of code, encapsulated into a more object-oriented style, which is still work in progress. But it was because the model consists of many parts. The engineering part was also quite heavy, I think, because of our chosen approach using network graph modeling. Okay, and in the next slide.
I think
Hey,
we have to
Thomas,
hurry up a bit because time's over with respect to the other teams.
Rodolfo.
Okay, then
Yeah.
I can hand over to Rodolfo for the interviews. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. So 3 key insights that we got from about 5 or 6 interviews. One, it was that reputation, which is something that we don't capture in the data today, was an underutilized asset, and that's being used today among team members. So whoever approves the requests actually keeps track of who has done a good work in the past, and that's something that today is not captured as far as we could tell in the near ecosystem. Another key insight was that success metrics are still very across different DAOs vary quite a bit. So some of them see output, so how quickly they can deploy funds as the main success metric. Some others see it more as, does this lead to a sustainable long-term output, right? So aligning, even as we think about the model and what success means, this is something that was something that we wanted to highlight. And then the other part was information. I'm sorry. So there seems to be a bit of a lack of information bridges across DAOs. So we were looking at density as one of the key metrics of interconnectedness, right, between the nodes. And it was mentioned that it's difficult to know, for example, if I need marketing help, who do I go to in the marketing DAO, or what are the services provided? So some level of market making almost in terms of services within the DAO ecosystem would be super interesting. And then I'll do one slide, and I'll skip the last one. If we can go to the next one. Thank you. And this is a very high level kind of like wish list. If we had, given the interviews that we had, if we had all the data that we wanted, right, what would we build? This is kind of like this snapshot here. And we identified, I won't go into all the details, maybe I'll just highlight one thing, that we identified a flow of funds as being a very important signal, of course. There's also flow of information, which is, for example, just intelligence, business intelligence almost. How many times have you participated in projects, right? That's just information that's out there. It's just not aggregated or not analyzed at the moment, right? And then reputation being the other big type of flow, right, or value flow. And in this way, as was mentioned with the previous team, the previous near team, we tried to think about what would a closed loop system look like when you combine all of those flows into a single system, where participants are actually more likely to get funded depending on the reputation of the team they're part of. So we could go into a lot more depth here, but I'll pause there, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys. It was awesome presentation, and we really are short on time right now. I don't think we have any raised hands, but I would like to ask for the next team to already jump in. We have next David, Phil, and John on Cofund, a system for confident project funding. So thank you guys from Three Dots and welcome.
Yes, let's go. I'll share my screen. Okay. We are John, Phil, and Davide. Unfortunately, Phil couldn't make it. He has COVID after ETH Denver, so we're only two, and we're thinking about Phil. We hope he gets better soon. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been awesome. Open science is amazing, and working with this group has been incredible. Yeah, let's go. So Cofund is a project that really crystallized over the course of this research initiative. That's primarily what this presentation will be about. It's a project that's aiming to solve grant funding problems in Web3 via programmable payments and automated treasury management. So the following presentation is generally speaking about the DAO, OceanDAO funding system and Cofund project aimed at solving grant funding and management problems in Web3, as I just stated. First, we'll briefly introduce the Ocean protocol, the OceanDAO, and how its reward system is designed. Second, we will touch on pain points we identified specifically within the OceanDAO and more broadly across Web3, and how Cofund seeks to improve upon these issues. Lastly, we will briefly situate Cofund within the larger Web3 environment to provide further context regarding why our solutions are needed. Beginning in November of 2021, the Governauts DAO Reward System Research Initiative has focused on measuring network healthiness in both macro and micro reward systems through various case studies in the OceanDAO, which was grants, the near SputnikDAO, which was also grants, and TEC Praise, which was peer-to-peer. Part one focused on measuring network healthiness, while part two experimented with proposing solutions to the problems that we identified. Ocean Protocol is a decentralized data exchange protocol that unlocks data for AI. It uses, oh, sorry, my screen just went blank. It uses advanced blockchain technology that allows data to be shared and sold in a safe, secure, and transparent manner. OceanDAO offers community grants curated by the broader community of Ocean holders. It's key to the growth and sustainability of the Ocean Protocol ecosystem as defined by the Web3 sustainability loop. Builders propose projects to the community, and token holders vote on projects that will add the most value to the ecosystem. Here's a quick diagram of the OceanDAO grant system. Really basic, just kind of, I'll walk through this, but here's the OceanDAO treasury. Builders can propose projects and they get voted on. If the vote is no, the ocean gets burned. If the vote is yes, then the projects proceed to get funded. And here is the proposed sustainability loop, the feedback loop that goes back into the OceanDAO to support the overall ecosystem of Ocean. So pain points. Projects are funded with little to no monitoring of results, leaving the OceanDAO vulnerable to poor outcomes and a broken feedback loop. Across Web3, we're seeing similar issues with the way funding systems are designed. In terms of pre-funding, there's a lack of efficiency for reviewing and deciding on project proposals. With regards to paying out grants, usually they're in lump sums. Also with KYC processes, there's a general lack of effectiveness because the funding is generally not retroactive. So there's uncertainty about the quality of the team. There's also a risk in grant mining. So essentially teams apply for grants, get them, but never build anything. In regards to execution, it's difficult to support teams except only through a lump sum payment. And with post-funding, generally there is a sell pressure on the token, which can provide some uncomfortable volatility.
Just remind you have more or less 4 minutes.
Okay, and Davide, go ahead.
Yes, John. Hi. So we have 10 minutes. Maybe I want to start with the brief comment on the program, like from my side. So it was like a unique experience for me. I come from first an academic background. So I have almost 10 years of experience in traditional research. I was doing academic research on agent-based modeling, coordination games. So very related to the things we are looking at here, but in a very different environment. But then after that, I transitioned to a very applied research work and product work. So I was working in an online marketplace, and we were using a simulator, but mainly to ask applied product questions. Right. So the goal was always to ask questions that help us build better software that help us improve the marketplace, which is a complex system, but the goal was always on practical software development. So I was responsible for the analysis and the simulation part. So you'll see some of that focus in our analysis. And the reason I wanted to intro this is because I think this is a slightly different type of research, right? Where the focus is less on using the simulation to answer a high-level question that we don't know the answer to, and more to simplify a bit more the problem, and then use the simulation to do product design, essentially. Explore different product directions that we don't know if they're a good idea or not, and use the simulation to shed light on them. So yeah. And then the last thing is more broadly on this community research initiative. As I said, it's been a first unique experience. Do I have just 2 minutes left? I thought I had 10 minutes.
We have 15 minutes in total for the team, and I guess time's almost over. So hurry up, please.
Okay, so it's been a great initiative. I'll share some more detailed comments later. So why do we need to solve this problem now? Well, there is a lot of funding going through all the major ecosystem in Web3. So next slide, please. So essentially, we focus on Cofund, a product that uses lump sum transfers plus money streams, and a review system which is powered by Oracle to solve the impact measurement problem to improve the way these grants are given out. Next slide. This is a quick view of the UI that we've developed for Cofund. Next slide. So this is really the core structure of the system we are simulating. So there is a funder, which is a treasury in a native token, TKN. Then there is a funding event, which is an approval, a milestone, or an Oracle feed in more automated systems. And then the Cofund system has two components, the Cofund Safe and the Cofund Oracle. The main flows we are modeling are the amount funded, invested, disbursed, and the project KPI. Next slide. So we assume a 3 months funding horizon with 2 intermediate milestones. The project is funded in TKN tokens, which is like the ecosystem token, but the contributors are paid in DAI, which is a stable token. And the Cofund system immediately invests any idle funding into DeFi to generate yield for the project. Next slide. Okay, so a summary of our results in the last 30 seconds we have. So essentially what we see is that by using this system, we can smooth the sell pressure on the ecosystem token because we're streaming money over the entire horizon of the grant. And the ecosystem token is sold only when really needed to pay contributors. And then on the project side, we also reduce the impact of volatility on the project finances. So in the table in the bottom right, you can see that we essentially run 3 scenarios. One in which the same amount of funding is and the same amount of costs, expenses to contributors are disbursed with 3 different systems. One is proactive funding, everything is paid at the beginning. One is retroactive funding, everything is paid in the end, and Cofund. So in this example, you can see that we use historical data where the price of the ecosystem token, in this case Ocean, was going down. So you can see that in the proactive case, essentially you disburse like a very little amount of funds, like just 49,000, but this can be problematic for the project because then they may not have enough funding towards the end of the period. With the retroactive one, if only then 90,000 ecosystem token are paid, actually it's gonna be too expensive for the project to finance its operations. So you can see that Cofund is in the middle, where the payments are smoothed over the entire horizon. So I think this is kind of like the main overview of how we address some of the problems. In the future, we have ideas of improving these even more through stable loans for project, potentially using and simulating also Cofund native token to align the incentive in the ecosystem. And also as other teams have mentioned, potentially investment types where the funder gets either a claim on a present token of the DAO project that gets funded, or an option on a future token emission.
Cool. Davide, thanks a lot, and John and Phil for the presentation. I hope we have the chance to dig into that in many more opportunities with Cofund. Patty was so nice to drop the links to your resources. If anyone wants to dig deeper into Cofund or the other projects, you can find the links in the chat. And everyone, make sure that this is public. So it seems that some of the documents are not accessible for the attendees. Please check. Okay. Patty, we can continue with the next.
Yes. Thank you, team. It was great to hear. Sorry there wasn't more time. And now coming next, we have Henrik, Andreas, Mark, and Sam to talk about improving OceanDAO reward systems with the social value creations, NFTs, and more transparency and accountability. So welcome, guys. You can take the floor.
Okay, so share the screen. All right. Can you see my screen? Okay, yes. So thank you. So quickly, we chose this very long title because we thought we should be short. But anyway, we have the case study focus was basically, you've just seen the presentation of OceanDAO in the background, and we've worked on the same project, looking at how to improve the overall health of the ecosystem, where we did the initial analysis suggested that we could probably grow the overall health if we somehow created trust in the value contributions in the DAO. So we thought NFTs, we spent a lot of time on modeling NFTs, both transferable NFTs and non-transferable. In this simulation, we modeled mainly the non-transferable NFTs related to the social status value of contributors. So basically introducing NFTs to increase the overall value, minting them when a funded project is progressing to plan, like traditional is a bad word, but source cred input from social media activity, but very much also a curation function looking at how you deliver to milestones, as it was pointed out by the previous team. The grants are given currently without having any sort of accountability for actually delivering on promises. So we have introduced a curation function, rewarding or slashing value based on ability to deliver, and then the contributors in the team members will then earn NFT values that are fractionalized and distributed to members, who then the whole ecosystem will see here are some great executors and team members, and they have a higher standing and ability to deliver, so they will accumulate more yes votes, and so you get a dynamic value increase. Also, we introduced the curation function, which is an audit function basically, to slash value, and then if people are not, or the contributors are not active, they will also be subject to a decay of NFT value, which we've then modeled. The overall results suggest that we can increase the social value and reputation with a curation function for the ecosystem, and then basically attract higher quality projects. So with that, Andreas is going to take us through our stock and flow diagram. Sam is going to take us through a loopy diagram showing the dynamics, and then Mark is going to take us through the cat model we have done. So over to Andreas.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Yeah, here you see the stock to flow model. We have two main actors. On the left side, the voters, on the right side, the teams. And if you look at the outside circle, you would see the typical model as it is structured today. So at the end, a team comes up with a proposal. There is a vote by the voters about the proposal, and based on the proposal votes, the teams get funding. And what we have introduced in our model is two things. One thing is the outcome curation that Henrik just mentioned, and the other thing is some kind of action or contribution measure forms of NFT reputational tokens. And just to remind you what our goals are, one thing is to, let's say, increase voter experience. So signaling back to the voters what the outcomes of their votes have been. So meaning what the contributions of the teams have been in measurable ways is seen as value. It's a signal, but it also includes staking or slashing mechanisms. So in the middle, you see this function. At the end, the proposals are weighted on the KPIs that the teams on their own come up with. And we also expect, for example, the effect that the quality of a proposal is, for example, heavily also measured about how well it can be measured. And so we see a way of, let's say, voter experience increase, but also voter and team accountability increase. And on the bottom right, you see the actions that lead into the NFT reputation of NFTs. There, the idea is really to not only to also measure the level of activity of the teams. At the moment, it's implemented in one dimension only, so it's just how much you contribute. But we also think of the idea of having different roles or areas of contributions to level it out. Again, here voters can better decide what teams are capable of conducting projects successfully. So at the end, yeah, more information for the voters, better voter experience. We hope this attracts more voters, and on the team side, more accountability and also probably better outcomes for the teams. And by that, I hand over to Sam.
Yeah, Sam, to supposedly get this model to work, play. All right, Sam, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Eric. When projects are funded from grants, and the teams get these grants and begin to work. So at a certain point, the curator, we introduce the curator to perform the curation of the project. The curator works with the team based on the set targets and KPIs to assess the team's productivity over time. If the team do not meet the set KPIs, there is delay, there's a no vote, and they are regarded as bad projects. That means their funding is burnt and does not, it has a negative feedback into the grant system. But if the actions of the team is satisfactory based on the KPIs and the decision of the curator, then the teams and the team and the members have earned NFTs and as a means of reputation. This will make them this is the validation that, oh, these guys are working and making progress in their work, and this leads to the more funding and value-added products, which is a two-way benefit to both the stakers and the treasury, because the ecosystem works on the same currency as the system. So the trading of data sets and all things works for the stakers that stakes on the value on the projects, and it helps with yield farming. So all this enriches the treasury, which benefits the crypto systems, and the crypto economy that is booming will also add value back to the grant system, and the cycle continues. With that, I hand over back to Henrik. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, and of course, if you have a war in Ukraine, the crypto economy crashes, so there will be less grants tomorrow on this one. Mark, do you want to take it to the CAT model, or do you want to use the slides?
Yeah, I will go into the CAT now. Okay.
So you're going to take the screen over?
Yeah.
All right. I should stop sharing then.
All right. You see this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, basically, this was the loop Sam was presenting, and now in a dynamic fashion. So you see the flows happening. Basically, this is the dynamic way of looking at the stock and flow diagram. What's interesting here is our approach that, as Henrik says, we would like to measure projects by doing their actions, and by meaning projects, of course, are consisting of team members. Team members are doing the actions, and projects are basically delivering on their tasks and milestones with their team members. And the way we modeled these actions is by doing a score, which is called a weight. And it's being done for the team members in a source grid way. And for the projects, it's being done, of course, when delivering tasks and milestones, you get a certain score. These policies we have implemented, and for the general idea, I used the statistics from the latest Ocean grant rounds. So basically, I looked at the statistics and distributed the weights to a certain level for the projects to start with. And later on, when projects are doing tasks and delivering on milestones, then after each round, and a round consists of 30 days, usually, well, in fact, that's not usual, of course, projects will take longer time, but for the simulation model, we took 30 days because that's a nice way of changing rounds, grand rounds as well. And the curator is curating projects just by looking at their progress and see if there are milestones being met or not. They get delayed, and we used some sort of an enumeration. And you see, of course, we exaggerated a bit about, okay, if a project doesn't deliver at all, we call it unsound. And then you have several levels of unsoundness being written in the verdict. And with this verdict, we are going to the values policy. And in the values policy, we use the verdict of the curator function to look at who has what kind of voters voted for what kind of project. And if voters have been voting for good projects, they earn some money. So they earn extra tokens, which are coming from the treasury. But when they voted for unsound projects, so projects that have been delayed or has a verdict in one of these sectors, then their tokens get slashed by a certain percentage. And so there is a certain kind of risk in the voting process introduced here, which is not at the moment in the OceanDAO ecosystem. Okay, looking at some results, this is the distribution, of course, of projects. So how does a project actually look like? Well, basically it's fleshed out with, you have some sort of budget with in a wallet. I must admit, I stole a bit from the Token Spice repo for this. So this is all about working together in ecosystems and all around the world. And milestones consisting of tasks. Tasks has certain weights. So if you deliver on a task, you earn some weight as a project. So what does weight mean? Weight is basically an accumulation of scoring in certain points in time. And this is important because then you can follow up on the decay function, which is going to say, okay, you earned some weight in maybe 30 days ago, but that weight is now way less valuable. So this is what the decay function means, is it's partial sigmoid function. As we say, okay, so in, let's say, about 10 days, you have only half of your score left. So that means that projects and team members are inclined to do actions that increase more weight. Then the NFT distribution. So the NFT are certain thresholds of certain weights that are accumulated. So if you pass with your accumulated weight to a certain threshold, you earn some NFT. And that NFT is a signal, of course, for voters in the system or other DAO members to say, hey, this guy has some reputation, this team has some reputation, this project is way above reputation. So in the next round, I may have to look closer to them because they are really performing well. And this is how you can earn NFTs. As you can see, it's a bit about, you know, the ocean names we took here. And cred is, you know, lent by the source cred system. So these are just numbers. And as you can see, okay, you have some top performers. There are, this is of course, you know, the gold standard. If you're Atlantis level, you have to really earn some reputation. But you see, lots of projects are already reaching out to that level, and they reach ocean status already. And then, of course, these are the top performers. Right. Some visualizations. Well, this is not really interesting. Just the connection from projects to individual team members. But this is also, so this is basically what you can see. If you see recurring projects, they are earning some weights, but they are also losing some weights. This is the decay function kicking in, as you can see. So these are the projects over 10 rounds, and you see some, let's say, recurring project like Project Sullivan. He's gaining weight here to 17, then he starts out from 14 to 19, then again drops to 16, and let's say, so this is what DK is actually doing to your projects. So basically, this is really something for you to look out for, that you really keep to deliver on your tasks and milestones. This is the penalty that voters are incurring if they don't deliver, if they haven't voted for sound projects, and then, well, let's see what's happening then. Oh yeah, here I have implemented a parameter sweep for a certain threshold of NFT levels. So if you see as a whole of the ecosystem that you see lots of projects are delivering on a certain threshold of NFT level, then you see yes votes going up and DAO members going up. But in this simulation, I think I have the numbers wrong, because yes votes are really going down a lot. So we have lots of unsound projects or projects that don't deliver according to value. So basically this is it. Hand over to Henrik.
Okay, thank you. And I guess we're up at time now. So I think on the lessons learned, I think it was from sort of overall here, we had a validation session with an Ocean ambassador to help us refine, calibrate the model. I think that was actually maybe the biggest lessons learned, or which was a good thing, which was not programmed, but Angela helped us present it in a town hall at OceanDAO, and an ambassador helped us tweak this and suggested a couple of refinements. So overall, great project, and thank you. Done. 16 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Maybe we have time for one question. And also, I think it's super worth digging into your model. I guess we also have the links in the chat, because you covered so many aspects and included so many parameters in your model that each of them is worth a dedicated presentation, I guess. Okay, any question?
I would have a quick question. This is like really awesome model. I think, as Angela said, a lot to dive into. How transferable do you think this model is to other grant ecosystems, or is it pretty custom to Ocean context in some ways? Like, how generalized do you think it is?
I think we talked a lot about that, but Mark, your view?
Yeah, it's really generalizable. I only put in the NFT markers for Ocean, like fish and fisherman and Monte. Actually, that was Henrik's brainwave, so thank you for that, Henrik. But of course, we can use other names for that for other ecosystems. The general idea of, accounting for projects and delivering on tasks and milestones is just general project management, which we can implement in every DAO system, I guess.
Cool.
Aquaman.
I'd have a question too. Oh, I'm invisible. Why? No, I'm not invisible. Regarding the idea, so I understood what the NFTs are used for in this model. Very, very cool stuff. I'm wondering what I would be very interested in expanding this model to would be feeding those NFTs with a more, so not just reputation, how well you're kind of actually implementing what it is that you should be implementing, but actually using outside metrics from outside the project as an additional kind of decision variable, basically. So my question is, now I got it, is could we introduce arbitrarily many potential additional decision variables around NFTs to give them like some more fidelity, more dynamic behavior that could be informed by whatever functions we come up with?
Mark, you want to reply on that?
Not sure I understand this correctly, but sure, you can do anything with NFTs. It's just the value you put on it. And the value is being determined by the DAO ecosystem itself. So what matters is, okay, what does the DAO really value? And then you model your NFTs or your basically your reputation weight accordingly, I would say.
Yeah, and I think we also discussed the question of, because there was that, you know, there is a discussion over at the Maker Foundation on lighthouse projects and creating NFTs based on star projects. So you could argue that potential. We discussed if we should also add a transferable NFT for basically trading the project market value, but the idea of the Ocean protocol is that that is the marketplace. So we're sort of like, okay, introducing a second guessing layer to the fundamentals, maybe not right here, but in other projects you would probably think that that could be a good idea. If you have like, I know, David, you're working on the moon jelly and the ocean conservation. So if you have a star project delivering exceptional coral reef growth, maybe you want to think about having NFTs dedicated to specific projects and not just the contributors on the project. So to monetize additional social value or something from that.
Before we jump into any other comments, I think it's time for the next one. But thank you so much, Henrik and the whole team, for excellent timing on all the presentation. And now I'm gonna ask Mark, Davik, and Kishordatya to talk about dynamics in DAO stakeholders participation.
Coming right up. I think this works. Screen. That thing over here. And I actually don't exactly know what you're seeing, but you're only seeing the presentation, I hope, not the other screens, because that would be confusing. Good, thank you. Oh, sorry, that was too fast. Well, first off, I gotta pay mad respect to the first OceanDAO team. So John, excellent introduction into the entire OceanDAO topic. So very grateful. We don't have to do it. So praise to you. This is team 3, originally named Arnet, but I don't think names are really that important. What is important is what we actually come up with and are able to deliver to you guys. So it's 4 of us, but we are 1 man down. Alp has COVID and he barely can speak. Maybe he will say a few words later on, but that's at least our condition right now. So I think we'll have Kish jump up and take some of his presentation parts over. Let's not waste too much time. What was the case that we worked on? OceanDAO, obviously. DAO health. What I think is very important to stress again, there are many DAO classes, and the OceanDAO case is really one of a grant awarding DAO. And our focus area, which I think is also, again, really useful to mention in context, was in phase 1, really the diversity of voter groups and trying to understand from the data that was available how their behavior may influence other stakeholder groups, right? This was one of our main hypotheses that we, I think, quite successfully put in our first phase presentation. Our focus for phase 3, I'm just going to close the chat, this is incredibly distracting. Our focus for phase 3 was the dynamic behavior of stakeholders, but not only between them, but really also of the DAO in and of itself. We built our main hypothesis that we wanted to learn more about around what would happen if DAOs were actually themselves adaptive to stakeholder behavior in more than just one way, which usually is price action of the governance token. Maybe there are other ways how DAOs could be adaptive. And that's what we basically explored at length. And our results in a nutshell, I'm not going to rehash the phase 1 results. So for phase 3, we came up with the idea of having a flexible grant cap. So in the case of OceanDAO, as you may still know, it works in rounds, and each round there was a 200,000 token treasury available to be dispersed among tokens, among projects that were voted upon by multiple stakeholders within the OceanDAO ecosystem. And what we thought of was to make that flexible, make it grow, make it shrink in the response to what we learned in phase 1, and what we based on assumptions early in phase 3 is the health of the DAO. And this is what we implemented in our CAD/CAD model as well. One of the key insights I think that we can take away here is that a large number of new projects coming in round over round, or low quality projects, these two metrics really have a big impact on, well, big is quantifiable, big impact on the health of the DAO, resulting usually in a sustained and unrecoverable drop in the award cap for future rounds, and a sustained drop in stakeholders that really just run away from the ecosystem and do not return unless an external event would actually come and happen. Now, talking about outcomes, I want to say a few words about our stock to flow model, and we'll be getting back to that later on slide 6 as well. It was a difficult one to implement, and it does not necessarily look great in 2D, I have to say, and we didn't have the ability to make that 3-dimensional. But one of the key elements, I think, that we are going to see in one of the next slides as well are the value ratios that basically take a lot of the stakeholder stocks, put them in relation to the entirety of stakeholders, or in relation to the total project stock. And we experimented quite a little bit with the concept of value ratios, because it's not really something intuitive. And I think there is, if I were to come to an Outlook slide now, this is something that I think could really be explored, because binding certain stocks to one another and determining that an expression of value or health is very likely a powerful way to just steer dynamics of a DAO. Our what-if matrix, we were not able to explore all the different scenarios, but we did explore 4. So Mark is going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But I do encourage you to take a look. We have that in the slides and in our HackMD as well. Now, before we go to the super crazy CAD/CAD model, I think Kish wants to talk about our Loopy a little bit. Kish, I'm going to open it now, and you take the mic whenever you want to.
Yeah, so about the Loopy, actually, we I think made around 4 to 5 different Loopies, and trust me, this is the middle version of that. This is not even granular and not even the basic one. But what we basically tried is we tried to map out what actually happens in the ocean ecosystem when a project is basically, when a grant round is, how the grant round is funded and how it goes on further when projects are being funded, and what are the different kinds of ratios that goes into no votes and yes votes. So like so this will not give us the exact output that the CAD/CAD model can, but this basically tells us the flow of how the whole system can work out. Doc, if you can just click on the upper arrow of the projects after the grants. Yeah. So like if you see there after like there are multiple negative negative impacts happening on the treasury, and that not only comes from the negative votes but from the positive votes as well, because as the grants are being funded, they are funded in ocean tokens, and ocean tokens to be utilized into the real world needs to be liquidated, and that liquidity basically on some level impacts the treasury as well. And similarly, how the type of project is, if it is a data driven project or a community driven project, it also impacts overall how the treasury is going to function. So yeah, I think we can go into the CAD/CAD model for a much more deeper look.
Okay.
Marcus, Doug, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, and maybe David, can you stop sharing?
Thanks, guys. I didn't realize I was muted. I guess my hearing turns off when I speak. Funny. I'm.
So
Anyways, Mark, I guess
should
it's
we
your
look at?
turn. I
Yeah.
guess I shouldn't speak too much.
Okay.
Mark, want to
Is it-
take it away?
Yeah, sure. Is this visible? Yeah.
Which should we look at the equations or at the CAD/CAD model?
At the CAD/CAD model, I will stop sharing. You're sharing, Mark, right?
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm sharing. Yeah.
Even though nice, Andrew was super excited about your equations. We'll dig deeper later, right?
A reminder of 5 minutes, guys.
5 minutes. All right. Okay, these are our assumptions. And David talked about, okay, we would really like to look into the different subcategories of either stakeholders or the projects, because they're influencing each other. And we define the stakeholders of the DAO ecosystem as follows. DAO members are the sum of all the stakeholders: voters, stakers, market makers. This is an interesting group, actually. Intermediaries connecting stakers to high quality data sets, and builders. These are the guys that actually are doing the projects for applying for a grant. And then we model the new projects. So these are the new entrants. Recurring projects are existing projects, which are subcategorized in 3 levels according to the OceanDAO funding tiers. So we have existing projects that have received 1 or more grants, experienced projects 2 or more. Of course, we have also 3 levels of experience once you get into the veteran stuff. Again, project can turn unsound. They don't deliver on their proposal and not according to the values. And then we randomize a lot of these things. These are the policies. Grant cap is basically the sum of all the, according to the OceanDAO funding tier, the sum of the new projects times the max grant they can get. Well, basically these are real numbers. So for the real OceanDAO ecosystem. We randomize a lot. We say, okay, what's happening during a round? What's happening to the projects? Are they turning to existing projects, or are they fading away? Are they turning unsound? Basically, we model this with a normal distribution, about a 30% chance they promote or they fade away. Also here we have a curation, and this is the unsoundness of projects. Later in the round, we say, okay, we have a higher chance of turning unsound, especially for new projects, because they're not experienced, so they have a higher chance of turning unsound. And of course, we only see that only later in the round. Here we also have a time span of 1 month, 1 round, to see how projects are developing. And we model this randomized again to say, okay, it has a higher chance to turn unsound later in the round. And then these are the models that David was talking about, the value ratios or the growth ratios of certain stakeholders, which are depending on the growth ratios of the dynamics of the projects. Well, what's happening then? We did 3 simulations and or 3 experiments with 4 Monte Carlo runs. This is quite daunting, I would say. In this base scenario, we say, okay, I have a parameter sweep of the new projects coming in. So 40% new projects, 60% and 80% per round. And then you see what's happening. And this is quite a healthy ecosystem. DAO members are moving up. But then again, builders are going down. And that's strange because, well, here, of course, you have more new projects coming in. It's all about modeling, if you do that right or wrong. And the nice thing that we wanted to simulate was the grant cap. What is the impact on the grant cap? And what we see here is that in this model, it's all around this 200K. So that's just about right. This is slightly less, and this is even more or less. When you have, of course, more new entrants, more new projects, 80% more new projects, of course, you don't need that much money. So this is all correct. And you see here, unsigned projects is leaping up, of course, to the end of the round. The round is 30 days. So that this is just, these peaks are just on the end of the rounds. All nice and well. And you see here the veteran projects. Okay. Experiment 2, a chance that the project turns unsound is 50%. So this is a higher chance that projects are turning unsound. And then you see immediately that the DAO ecosystem is plummeting. So everybody is leaving because we have lots of unsound projects. And that's, you can see here, the level of unsigned projects is quite high. It's even around the total projects. And then we had a third experiment, and that really failed, this experiment, because I didn't know what happened. So we experimented with, okay, what if the market maker stock is plummeting in certain rounds, in round 5? Then maybe we should see a drop here in market makers somewhere here. This is round 5, about 150 days. But nothing's happening. So I guess this statement, most models are wrong, some of them are useful, is the first part of it is true here. So this needs really digging into. Okay, so that's it. Take it away, David.
Okie dokie. We're a little bit short in time, so I will breeze through our journey. This is actually one of my favorite slides. Phase 1 was really crucial about learning about the problem space, because we didn't really have an intuition there. I mean, each of us knew OceanDAO somehow, but in terms of developing an intuition, this is really what made the entire research group possible, at least for me, and I think for the others in the group as well. Phase 3, I have to say, this was a little bit of a different beast. What definitely happened is that our work there took us in a different direction than we would have expected based on the results we had in phase 1. And one of the key insights really was that the tools we use can really lead us astray. To be more specific, if adding complexity is easy, we have a tendency to add a lot of it. And we had a lot of loopy iterations, and I think the rest of the team would agree, it slowed us down at a crucial point of view, at a crucial moment in January. So we kind of had to regroup and figure out how we can move forward. And that's where I think that the desire to get to a beautiful model is not necessarily satisfiable in the beginning, especially when you have tools that make complexity very easy. That's why I'm very partial to the flow, the kind of the progress, the process that we are taught actually as part of the CatCat Edu program, because it really works well. But you know this already, guys. I didn't complete the last sentence on the slide, but never mind. So just to summarize, differential spec and S2F are valuable tools. We relied on them really end of January, February to come up with the CatCat model that we have now. And I think this was one of the most important parts of our work in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And that's also my favorite part of token engineering. Alrighty, we have 2 more slides. Kish, you want to take them away?
Few minutes.
These are the like similar points that David spoke about. We kind of went into a lot of analysis paralysis. I think we had to implement our own intuitions, and we had to take learnings from OceanDAO as well, and we all wanted to do it in the one place. So we made a lot of complex loopy sketches, but we didn't know what to do with them later on, or what exactly was happening when it was like created. So like these are the few learnings that we sort of think we should try to work upon the next time. Is like we shouldn't we first thing is like we should fix up the hypothesis that we are that we want to work upon, like because we iterated upon hypothesis I think thrice, but like, and that basically changed the overall stock flow diagrams, loopies, and it at the end in the ending week actually it put a lot of pressure on Mark. So sorry for that. And just the same thing. You can take it to the next slide.
Yeah, the next slide is actually this slide. So I guess we are done. Thank you, Patty, for watching the time for us.
Thank you guys for meeting the time. We unfortunately don't have time for questions, but we are good to go for the next scene. And thanks a lot for your last presentation. Now we are opening a new reward system with not with grants, but with peer-to-peer systems. And the first one to open it is Pedro. And the title is, DAOs that embrace the chaos within give birth to dancing stars. So Pedro, if you want to take the, yes, thanks. I think you might be on mute. Can anyone hear? Is it just me? No? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah. Perfect.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, for some reason I wasn't being able to unmute myself, but here we are. For this presentation, I have to offer what is both a presentation and my final outcome. So this is the space of a DAO digital garden, and we'll dive into what a DAO digital garden means, and then we will also dive into the expected presentation topics of case study, notes, journey, and resources. Digital garden,
Pedro, I'm not sure if it's only on my side. I have really a problem to understand anything. Can you hear us?
The audio was really bad.
Yeah.
Repository with some this.
Okay, so very similar to the last session. Patty, can you check in the background? And
yes,
we'll continue with another presentation, and you sort it out.
I will. Yeah. So next presentation is.
Patty, you are muted.
No, next presentation is seed code, and I'll talk to Pedro in the background. So you guys can move on.
Yeah, give me a second. I wasn't prepared.
Thanks for jumping in.
Breaking the chaos.
Yeah, I'll embrace the chaos. No worries.
Presentation
Yeah,
from
can you?
His name. Oh, okay, great.
Yes, sound, video, all good.
Sound good, video good, but no slides yet.
Okay, okay, slides are here.
Right.
Okay, let's
Perfect.
go. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah, okay, so hi everyone. All of you know me from team 13 in phase 1, which was called Pi Party. So in phase 2, the team got very much modified. I'll let you know what the team was. Today it's just me presenting because my teammates were very occupied with some other things. So we renamed it to Pi Part T, which focuses on Token Engineering Academy. And I'll let you know the context about that in the future. So the team name is T22, and the members which we started with are Aloysius, Andy, who's in Vintantial, and Walter. And the title of our project is CommonsWTH, and that stands for Wealth, Truth, and Health. So these three things are like funny when abbreviated, but why do we club these three things together, especially in a decentralization context? That is because like these three, when truly represented for any commons, for any cyber physical commons, let us really visualize what's going on and like propel the whole community forward, right from an individual level to a community level. So if we don't do that, we enter situations like this when we are not measuring anything. Like all the metrics that we have in our DAOs are all haywire. So the whole essence of this project that we were working on is to measure DAOs and to just come up with new frameworks for measuring DAOs that extend beyond just wealth or just health or just like the community aspects of it. Measuring DAOs holistically at the individual level and seeing how they change the collective behavior of the DAO. So this is very much inspired from many artifacts that have come in the crypto pluriverse over the last many months. And yeah, I remember like having COVID and attending a TE session and just being extra poetic and coming up with this inspired poem from John Donne that no man, no individual is an island entire of itself. Every person is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. So that's very true for any group or community, that it starts from an individual, then the whole community begins to resemble like an superhuman individual itself. And this is very well represented by like Yancey Strickler's bento. These quadrants are called bento diagrams, and it focuses on the priorities that one should have. So like when we think about individuals, it always is about, now it's about me, then it's about future me. But when we turn the priority and shift it to now it's about us and the future is about us, the whole point of view of representing reward systems and any other metric changes. And obviously no description of the commons is complete without paying an homage to Elinor Ostrom, who is an absolute legend, and I'm deeply grateful to this program to introduce me to it at such a deep level. So Walter and I and everyone in our team have been talking about how Ostrom's principles can be better implemented in the TEC, and most of it came down to like nested enterprises and like keeping the source of decisions close to the source of impact. And the whole point of monitoring is very important, which is a major theme of this particular project. So yeah, from Ostrom, I want to shift our attention a little bit to another individual who is inspiring a lot of people, which is Nick Bostrom, who talks about transhumanism. And while I may not fully agree with like like increasing the superpowers of any one individual, we begin to see that when we talk about transhumanism or post-humanism, they begin to resemble community behavior very, very quickly. So yeah, like this is what Nick Bostrom calls the possible modes of being. And I think communities or coordinated behavior that we see in complex systems like ant colonies and DAOs is very, very much similar to what post-human scenarios might look like. So this whole program taught me to ask better questions. That is, how does individual behavior relate to community behavior? Is there any imbalance and whale behavior in the praise system and the impact our flow distribution in the old system as well as the new system, which was recently quantified? How does impact hour get distributed in general versus the distribution for the largest praise sender? Is this distribution normal or skewed? Is there a relationship between the amount of praise given and amount of praise received with respect to the impact hours? And what does the new TEC data say about the DAO health or the health, wealth, and truth of token engineering commons? And what can we learn from different communities? And what can TEC offer to different communities as we move ahead in this journey of exploring better token engineering? And a lot of these questions were inspired by my journey, which I had the huge opportunity to go through before starting this program of rewards research. And it's always on the quest of asking better questions. So this is what Walter and all of my teammates always used to drive home, that the questions that are the most simple are always the most profound. Good questions always come from a sincere desire to learn. And experts rarely ask good questions. So it's always better to be a beginner, which like Dr. Andrew Penland here, Sean, Peter, Angela, Livia, all have repeatedly shown me by practice and leading by example. And questions are an opportunity to be humbled. And we were very humbled when we were going through the data and owning up to what we don't know and disclosing, listening, and clear attention. These are preconditions. And yeah, there's no such thing as mastery. A mastery is the pupil in the eye of the world. So it's always better to be a student. And I think I'll be a student of token engineering for a long time. And just as we were starting the year, we came across this wonderful post on representing DAO health across these 9 different metrics, which are divided between community, governance, and finance. So we have the role conversion funnel, like how do new roles get converted to higher responsibilities within the DAO. Then the small word score or the Gini coefficient, and how small the world is, how connected the people are within a particular DAO, and forming leaderboards of connectors and outliers, which are the contributors within the DAO playing different roles. And then what is the proposal approval rate in governance? Like how many proposals are approved? How often are they approved? How much participation there is? How much voting involvement there is? If it's a delegated system where delegates are delegating their tokens to stewards, how much delegation is represented, and so on. And similarly for finance, finance represents wealth, governance represents truth, and community represents health. So this is the health, wealth, and truth trifecta that we are trying to cover in this whole adventure. So finance represents top 10 outflows, the token distribution, the token holding, and the TEC data in the Dune Analytics dashboard that I will show really goes deep into it. The plan versus the actual spending and consumption of resources, community token Gini index, like how centralizes the DAO. And we learned that there's tons of tools available in the assemblage that took place, and everyone came with many different solutions, opportunities, and downsides of the systems they used. And this just opened our world to many possibilities, that if we are leading towards a world which Kevin Owocki calls an impact DAO, which are DAOs which work with each other for impact, we need to focus on 2 things, that is a mechanism as well as a funding source. So you see examples of different DAOs here. In the case of TEC, you have tokens decided by bonding curves, and the funding source is fundraising. Whereas Gitcoin grants, for example, the mechanism is quadratic funding, and the funding source are very widespread across different mechanisms that you see here. So you can see that all these impact DAOs can stack with each other, coordinate with each other, and this will lead to like building and using different tools for conviviality. Like as we play around and like explore with different tools, like we have in this particular program with Loopy and CatCAD and so on. So this is the token engineering flower, which was shared by Olivia in our thread. And this is what lets us really play and explore in this world and understand what the different roles and contributions are within a particular DAO. So every contributor is different, and this health should be represented when we're calculating the health of the DAO. Like just focusing on one particular department does not make any company in the traditional world or a DAO successful. So keeping a track and map of all of this like results in like forming a society. Like DAO is a society, and most of you are seeing this picture from me for the umpteenth time. So yeah, it's almost become a meme at this point that like the incentive that we design should have a technology component to it to inspire the technologists in the DAO, a culture component to it to keep the health, like trust, love, and respect in the DAO alive. Then policy, which decides the decisions, and obviously the economics, which decides a lot of other things. And all of these things are interdependent. So with this, we come to our first loopy about how to like come up with different reward mechanisms that stack upon each other. So if you can see this screen, this particular screen, firstly, you will see that I'm using an advanced version of Loopy, not the one that Nikki Case built. This was like updated last year by one wonderful contributor who did not become famous for some reason. So I just found about this 2 weeks back, and you can do many different things which you cannot with Nikki Case's original tool. So let's start again. So in the beginning, when nothing else exists, you see that contributors are full of energy. They are willing to work for free, and they're willing to just put in all they have got to contribute to public goods, to contribute to funding mechanisms. And you will see that how that results in a very healthy ecosystem, which is oscillating among each other and creating positive externalities and creating a positive feedback loop. Which has an impact on society, which further has an impact on better funding mechanisms and bringing in future contributors. And this flux is really important. If everything maxed out in the beginning, then there is no like quest to fulfill in the first place. And if you see that, we start with, let's say, very like dead in the beginning. It will be a very different contribution graph. You'll see that nothing else happens if contributors are not extremely motivated to do things. So it really makes a difference in the long run that the initial conditions are set properly. So with this, we come to the next part, focusing on the TEC and seeing if TEC is actually healthy. So is the TEC system actually healthy? So in the phase 1 of the program, Andy, who is my teammate, came up with these wonderful Sankin graphs in which he measured praise that's incoming and praise that's outgoing from different praisers. When we exclude EVM like Ivy from the chat, we see that it's a much more equitable distribution. And the reason we had that outlier was because that person had very specific responsibilities. So we can see that we had a very like equal distribution of praise given as well as praise received. And this visualization of relationships really helped us understand like which or where on the graph do different people sit. So for example, you can see that Livia is on the scale, like on the log scale, she has given a lot of praise and she has also received a lot of praise. So this really showed us that this is how we can measure individual health in the DAO, and that can help us understand different like conclusions which come from these kinds of data sets. So these are like flowcharts are created for praise count and praise sums, and the counts and sums are pretty similar. the results corresponding with the praise impact hours are near to skewed in the terms of distribution. Top 10 praise senders are responsible for more than 75% of impact hours. Top 15 praise receivers are responsible for 70% of impact hours. Except for IV, other praise senders are not outliers on both metrics. The impact hour praised and received by participants are strongly correlated. The amount of events praised and the amount of events received by participants have strongly correlated relationship. So this led us to conclude that the TEC system is relatively healthy and without many whales who control all the praise distribution. So this was phase one, where we assumed that we should put community over contributors. We should keep the administrivia low and preserve, maintain care, and reward all these things. And we understood how wrong we were on certain aspects, and I'll get into that. So we discussed the concept of a praise rank and mapping relationships between different people. And again, it became important that we live in an interdependent society. So measuring an individual's incentives and motivations are actually extremely important when we go about designing reward systems. So this not only comes from Maslow's hierarchy that you see in front of you, in which there are more objective needs which are similar, more or less, and there are more subjective needs which are more personal to each and every one. And we should be very careful about how we identify that. And just as a meme, I created the Maslow's hierarchy of deeds, where we have the qualified self, where we are not measuring anything, where we're just going with our gut feel about how the DAO is performing. Then there's a quantified self, where we are measuring things, but we are not taking any actual action based on that. Then you have a quintessential self, where you know your place in in the DAO, and you're really taking steps to improving and growing individuals as well as the DAO. And then there's the thing what Kevin Owocki talks about, which is impact DAO stacking upon each other. And this is a term borrowed from squad wealth and quadratic funding. It's called squadratic. And when we become these parts of different squads which coordinate with each other, and that's when we see that people are most motivated. So this is what we are seeing with onboarding and then immersing people into different tasks, and then mastery in the DAO itself. So when we balance the skill level as well as the challenge, we realize that we actually can represent that as a valuable health metric for an individual contributor. Then Owocki also talks about the Matthew effect, which is very important for public goods DAOs, in which the rich get richer, but the poorer people with lesser resources to start with also get richer over the long time. So this is very evident in the case of TEC, and we'll see that in a moment. So we'll again go to another loopy, which is describing the contributor engagement feedback loop with respect to one particular contributor. So let's see. So when a contributor starts contributing without any returns expected, you see that over time it becomes a positive feedback loop. And you see that the contributor invests more effort, feels good about it, shares more with the DAO, which ends up in more contributions, which leads to more actions in the DAO, which leads to more exploration, which leads to more rewards received by the contributor. So it's a positive feedback loop and a virtuous cycle that gets created if all those criteria are satisfied. So moving back, this also comes at the cost of what incentives we give to contributors. So if we gift them stuff or we reward them with just stuff like merchandise or goodies or tokens, that is one form of reward. Then you have tokens which also represent power, access, or status in the DAO, and different responsibility, such as being a steward and really caring for the DAO. These responsibilities are cheap in terms of tokens, but very powerful in terms of the impact they have on the DAO. Whereas when you do things like airdrops and different reward mechanisms which are front loaded, you see that those are costly but very weak rewards. And that brings us to the point of why we should have different dashboards, and why DAOs especially should have different dashboards at an individual level as well as a community level. So this has been very successfully used by Web2. And you can see that with many different dashboards that many companies use. So you can see Web2 dashboards, which are used for recruitment, for KPIs, for measuring like digital marketing, for web analytics, for product activity, feature launches. And this is something we can definitely use from Web2 without falling into the incentive structures that make Web2 like worse than Web3 in some ways. So this is an effort that we started at Gitcoin DAO, and that's called Steward Report Cards. And I'll share that here. So when you see like Steward Report Cards, it's a report card like you used to get in school after every year. And here it's used for a positive force. So every individual's health is measured over like a 30-day trailing average, and it's kept on a scale of 10, and different criteria are used to measure how healthy a steward's activity has been. So it depends on the number of forum posts, the voting weight a steward has, the vote participation, and this is all measured from like the different platforms that a DAO uses. And similarly, we are partnering with another tool called Karma, which is building alongside Gitcoin, and soon probably with even TEC if things go well. And this also like corresponds different metrics and measures like a Karma score based on the number of votes, based on vote participation, based on how many DAOs a person is a member in. So this is becoming an important metric because everyone has a liquid workforce and everyone is working at different DAOs. So more DAOs might indicate that a person might be, for example, very thinly spread out. So their votes may be not as impactful. So that can be one criteria. And similarly, we can have forum activity score based on the different forums that every DAO uses, like Discord, Snapshot, Tally and Snapshot for representing voting, and obviously Discord. So POAPs are also a metric that this tool uses. And we are really trying to measure how like DAO health works at an individual level to a community level. And this brings me to the next topic, which is how do we measure wealth? So the whole inspiration for this topic came from the word commonwealth to the word CommonsWTH, which where commonwealth is a traditional English term meant for a political community funded for the common good. So I think now it's time for representing CommonsWTH. And this is exactly what this dashboard that people in the TEC created. And I'm really thankful to Livia for sharing this with me. So this goes into like how many holders exist in the token engineering commons, how many holders like have how much tokens. And you can see that like the holdings here, like 10% of the holdings are by one address, 7% by the other address. And after that, it becomes increasingly equally distributed. And you see how much value is like locked in the pool and how much reserve exists and how much is available for the commons, and how the balance and the reserve changes over time, as well as the activity. So these are the dashboards that Balaji was referring to when he talks about like how successful Web2 has been for measuring activity. And you see that like if we measure all these things transparently, that increases the faith and trust that people can put into a particular system. So these go through multiple different ways of representing like treasuries inflow and outflow, where funds were spent and where funds were allocated. And this really like is a trendsetter for different DAOs to do this well and to use DAO like DAO analytics tools like Dune Analytics, which helps with on-chain like analysis. And then lastly, we come to decentralized truth, where it's really all about coordination. So that's something we are seeing with this particular program, where we partnered with Ocean, Near, and the TEC, and like also got Gnosis to like partner through posting on their governance forums. Similarly, we are seeing increasing like token distribution deals between different DAOs. So for example, in the case of Gitcoin DAO, there's a mutual grant with Developer DAO where the proposal issues 50,000 GTC for governance rights to Developer DAO. So this helps in compensating people who collaborate with Gitcoin DAO, and also to fulfill the missions of both DAOs. Similarly, we saw another partnership with PrimeDAO, which is a DAO focused on such partnerships and token swap deals. And similarly, we swapped a certain number of Gitcoin for PrimeDAO's governance token. And this led to like representing more truth, or having more DAOs have a say in each other's governance. And this led me to multiple learnings in this program, which is communities must collaborate with each other. Coordination should start from the people layer, and building bridges must almost become a key performance indicator in reward systems. And the best practices in different DAOs should be reused as much as possible. For example, praise should be used across DAOs as much as possible as a public good. The tools that Gitcoin DAO is building for compensation and other things should be used as much as possible. Then rewards and incentives are multidimensional across society, which is technology, economy, policy, and culture. And finally, the intangible things that the public goods really make the whole DAO or break it if they are not taken care of. So building communities of care, love, respect, and practice are equally important as all the other tangible things that a DAO does. And public goods incentives really make a community thrive. With all that said, I'm really honored to be introduced to the praise system and praise all of you. And in my closing slides, I'll just share a few memories. Yeah,
I don't think we have time.
Yeah, so I'll just wrap up. Yeah, discussing praise with Sean and Peter in office hours, musing over praise rank with Angela, convincing Matthew Slater, which was my favorite moment, that tokens can be a form of money, thanks to El Salvador and Bitcoin, and becoming an infinite automaton with Dr. Andrew, and having the best time with my meme team with Andy, Aloysius, and Walter. Setting up a TEC cross Gitcoin partnership with Walter and other people, getting extremely bamboozled by the assemblage, keeping up to speed with the help of Patty when I had to really miss certain sessions because of other responsibilities, and becoming extra poetic during catching COVID, and introducing Governauts to kernel and vice versa. I'm really happy, and there are some of you in the audience who are parts of this. So I'll close with this slide where Governauts will improve trad DAOs with better metrics for health, truth, and wealth, and go get other Governauts. Cool, thank you. And here's to playing an infinite game. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. It was a great presentation. Love to see. And now we have a very short time, and I'll ask Pedro to try again on his presentation with Ronki also to present a little bit of CAD. You have, let's see if the audio works for you guys, and then let's give it a try. Pedro, we cannot hear you yet.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Perfect audio.
Yay, yeah, sorry for the technical issues. Here we are, here we go. So I was saying that this presentation also doubles as a final outcome. At the same time that I would like to share some of the expected topics, case studies, journey, learnings, resources. This is also a proof of concept for a DAO digital garden. So what is a digital garden? I am trying to combine here. I've been experimenting with combining here structures similar to a decentralized newsletter and a sort of a commonplace book. And by combining these two components, I aim at leveraging the benefits of highly dynamic knowledge repositories with a rhythmic, a decentralized creation cycle. And with this, reducing the information asymmetry that plagues all the decentralized coordination at scale that we've been trying so far. This is by no means a manual or you may saying on any of those topics. This is really a documentation of the investigations that I've been through with some of you. And if you have any feedbacks, since we have such short time, you can access this page. You can leave a comment. You can reach out to me on Discord. So back to what is a digital garden. Before trying to say what it is, maybe why is it here? I think that the key thing that brought me into proposing digital garden for hopefully for the TC or the T Academy or for us researchers is the question of how can a community lead itself by helping itself make sense of the world. Ultimately, an organization is only as healthy as its decisions allow it to be. And without a living and decentralized memory, how can a decentralized organization make good decisions? So this is a model, an architecture of learning in public, which is a little bit different from wikis, where digital garden has room for insights, has room for actual learning processes, and a evergreen updating, evolving, connecting of, again, ideas, insights, narratives, and more. So how can it be done? Basically, we have 3 areas. We have curators, we have highlights, and digests. Anyone can be a curator, and you can become a curator by highlighting something, which can be done by a simple form, a chatbot, or directly into the platform. You can lead a curation by helping digest, helping process the raw highlights, and also by proposing digest, proposing newsletters, proposing documents like this one that I'm presenting to you right now. And finally, you can also be a curator when you help validate those processes, when you maybe contest a digest content and you help find a agreeable amending to that. And highlights, we have 3 types of them as well. We have the raw highlights that come straight from the forms or the bots. You have integrated highlights which have been processed by by other curators. And finally, we have the consolidated highlights, the so-called evergreen highlights, which constantly get renovated by new connections, by new usage. And that process happens especially because of the digests, which are this kind of like internal newsletter, and also has 3 steps. We have a proposed digest, which come from the lead curator. We have a validated digest, which is the final process, the final product that gets shared to the community. And we have the contesting digest in case amendments have to be made, in case some adjustments have to be done. And with the combination of these 3 elements, we can get a synergy, emergent behavior of this constant filling out, saving out conversations and narratives and insights and links to a process of integration of knowledge, reducing of information asymmetry in the community with these digests, which both constantly feed, nurture each other. This is the core idea of a DAO digital garden, and later we can try playing a bit with it. Again, as a proof of concept, some core functionalities are already there. We can discuss more about that later. But now focusing on the research itself, I think that one of the things that guide myself as a researcher is this idea that the way we organize ourselves to produce knowledge determines the knowledge we produce. And here with you in this research system program, I had the pleasure, the privilege of diving into the token engineering commons community and the TEC praise system. And during the first phase of research, together with Henrik and Theodore, I dived into the understandings of system health there and how they could be understood, how they took place. And one of the outcomes of that exploration was that striving for KPIs, for objective outputs from the Ostrom principles, which is part of the TEC MVV, could really help understand the health of its systems by applying its own values. And as phase 3, it was about modeling the case study, mostly using stock to flow, then simulating with a digital twin with CAD, and proposing improvements based on these findings. It was really interesting exploring the modeling, exploring different visualizations, angles. Unfortunately, the digital twin was outside of my scope, but instead I explored a few other improvements based on first-hand experience and other qualitative approaches. Again, this DAO research garden is one of these improvement proposals. We have here a non-exhaustive list of those insights, those improvements. The idea of a digital garden came from the understanding that the way praise is measured, the way we aggregate the praise data, and that data goes through an analysis, a batch analysis that would then lead into improved guidelines and parameters. It came to me that the importance of both warm data and the practices of archivism. And again, we have this digital garden as interesting, as hopefully a fluid archivist practice. And with it, we also have a simple digital garden model, how exactly the pieces connect, how they interact. We have, again, what I explained earlier, a highlight curator, highlighting some insight into a raw database, which then gets digested into integrated highlight, which eventually gets revisited or is used as fuel for proposing digests, and so on and so forth. Besides this idea of warming data, of making sure context and process is also part of the data itself, it also came to me the challenges of inflation, diversification of treasury, and I stumbled upon this new token format called range tokens, which were developed exactly for this use case. And I would love to continue a conversation where this new model could be experimented or considered for the TEC treasury. Then with the quantification process, and for those of you who are not aware, when someone praises a contribution, later on, this praise needs to have a weight, and that's where quantifiers come in. That's what quantification is about. And as I helped test it, it came that a great challenge, something that led into decision fatigue, was how we also had to sort through duplicates, ambiguous praises, besides the actual weighting of praise. So besides possibilities for manually and automatically decoupling disambiguation from the quantification process, I also came with this this flow chart, this mapping, this attempt at understanding where praising comes from, so we can better praise, so we can better quantify, and we can also better analyze each batch. So we have praising because the contribution is not perceived as being rewarded at all, or maybe not rewarded enough by the current rewarding systems, or praising because it is perceived as a desired contribution, or maybe an exceptional contribution regarding effort, regarding impact, or culture. Moving on. We have the
Just quickly a reminder that you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. So moving on, almost wrapping up. We have the TC praise model, which began with a journey of exploring connections freely, exploring each step of the rewards, not only praising, but also the source cred process, which eventually led me to a more holistic, consistent view according to a stock and flow model, which unfortunately we won't have the time to dive here again, but just send a message, or we will have other opportunities to check it out again. I also tried to come up with a simplified model as I was banging my head with developing a digital twin, which understands the praising system as a staircase where on each step you have either the possibility of a leak or of a filtering, which eventually leads to a token allocation that unlocks rewards for contributors and resets the cycle. Well, I also tried some playing with Loopy, with some messy but fun results, and a brief description of what the hell is going on. But during the late stages of research, I had the pleasure of coordinating on a start of a cat simulation, and I think she can tell us a little bit more about that. Are you there?
Okay, you wanna present?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone. It's been a long day. Quickly want to show, okay, from there, we're able to get this done. Yeah, it's my first time in TEC, following the card, basically following the differential equation about the changes in the contributors number and the token allocation. This is assumed to be the token allocation. A time step, even though it's 1, but it's actually taken as a quarter. The simulation is still in progress, really. But the interesting thing, I checked with a great data scientist in the academia, was that this is the simulation that was gotten with Monte Carlo run for 400 time step with the parameters. Let me see. Okay, with this parameter n equals 1, the range of the time 400 with the system params. So, well, the interpretation I was able to give this is it forms a triangle, because one of the major assumptions is that there's no time contributors are not in the DAO, in the ecosystem. So the other one quickly is this. Okay, with the last one, that this is the token allocation. It grows, it's depleted with proportion to the number of contributors that are in the ecosystem. And this is the contributor as well, just to ensure that the token treasury is not totally depleted. Thank you. Yeah, Pedro?
Great, you gave it a shot, Ronki.
Yeah, I was super happy to have the pleasure of coordinating with her, and we're looking forward to continuing working after the research program. I think just wrapping up, again, you're all invited to play with this digital garden with me. Unfortunately, we might not have the time right now to enjoy it, but I had a small curation of memes. Yay. We will check them out later.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for making the presentation happen, and thank you, Ronki. And now I'm gonna ask us a surprise presentation to come up. Mark Liberati, you have a few minutes, but hope you can do it. Okay.
Yes, hi, and thank you. I will make this very quick, and I will just, hopefully you can all see my screen and the slides. So also on the TEC praise, the idea was praise B and based on praise the swarm. So this is building on some of the earlier research from the first cohort on really diving deep into the TEC praise system from a perspective of Eleanor Ostrom's principles and applying those and looking at how those could be used to strengthen the overall reward system. So what we wanted to then focus on was sort of decentralized praise budgeting as one method to increase the overall health of the praise system. Like any budgeting system, you have to then align that with the community because you're ultimately prioritizing what you value. But it is in line with Ostrom's principles, namely the first 5 of her 8, in defining clear boundaries because you're putting those into smaller defined pools. You're matching those rules governing to the commons to the local needs. Therefore, you can have specific working groups have different ways they would give praise as according to another working group. So it allows for that local flexibility. Those that are affected by the rules can participate in modifying the rules. This is the overall mechanism of the rewards board that has been built into the TEC, that the rules making rights of the community members are respected by the outside authorities. It's also part of within the common stack. So praise sort of has an external recognition if you were to carry that recognition across different DAOs. And also looking at that this is used as a way to monitor community behavior. Number 5 for principles, and obviously this is a good mechanism also because the praise giver has to actually have been present to validate that effort that is actually being praised. What we wanted to sort of strengthen was safeguards to avoid cross-subsidization and devaluation. Also looking at how we could smooth out the praise cycle in the way that it's being through the exchange rate mechanism because it's the different currencies effectively that are being used. How this could further the key performance indicators that would be established in the TEC and how that the data collected around the praise could be used in furtherance of that, as well as sort of general Ostrom's principles in looking at sustainable resource replenishment rate so that value is consistently maintained inside the ecosystem. I won't play my loopy out of the interest of time, but I'll just explain what this was trying to model. We're obviously trying to use praise as a signal of public goods value. how, again, in those budgeted areas, those are in the purple, where you're budgeting, and then looking at the stock of the reputation of both the praise delegator, that's the initial provider of the praise, and the validator. And having started looking at if the praise validator rejects the praise that was given, it would then be burned, which ultimately would feedback loop into the provider's reputation as being a good allocator of praise. That was a mechanism to ultimately safeguard the rewards pool, which is the sustainable resource that you're trying to maintain throughout the ecosystem, as well as optimize the value contribution to make sure that you're actually properly incentivizing that. Now, based on Swarmwise, a book that was offered as as part of this research, which I've dived into a bit, but also then tweaking this a bit because praise swarm is good for signaling and obviously coordination, but we are not bees. There's just worker bees and queen bees. It's sort of a dictatorship system. I think that needs to be acknowledged when we're applying the Swarmwise model. So we try to then think about what is a more colorful, inclusive mechanism while taking the best aspects of Swarmwise to sort of bolster the praise system. Here it was looking at spiral dynamics as a qualitative assessment. So as it was stated before, there's sort of this validation, quantification process that gives it weights. But this is, of course, with a very small group of people. And also you want to actually have a broad variety of qualitative assessments. So looking at what we could do inside the TEC for the existing spiral dynamics model. So here, this can be very easily integrated with SourceCred because the idea was emoji implementation. So each emoji is on the colors of the spiral economics against those praise. The community members could also then vote as to what that praise was, or not vote. They could add their color, if you will, according to how they felt that praise fits on the spiral dynamics assessment. This could also then filter into the weighted aspect. So you could automate that weighting component in the SourceCred. This allows for community validation of praise. And then, of course, this is part of the engineering aspect of collective intelligence. And here are some of the sort of the data analytics you could get into if you were able to then have that data. You can have sort of a vortex of value that you could also use in these dashboards that would provide you with systems health. And here I broke it up into the quadrants and I called them wavelengths. So the quadrants were the slices and the wavelengths were going in the circles. But anyway, the quadrants would reflect the various working groups, initiatives, and also the metrics of excellence. And then, of course, the wavelengths are the epochs. These are the cycles. I call them the qualitative vibrations. You can see within each quadrant how deep one color is within the spiral dynamics. And this can allow for micro-targeting of value within each of those quadrants, meaning, for example, a working group. Now I just wanted to quickly touch upon what could be used from what we had researched on data modeling. Here was one model that we had provided on a stock and flow, and here it was just trying to answer two questions. How can you give a consistent rate of conversion across all working groups, and how can we automate the budgeting process so that it could actually all then be aggregated, goes to the rewards pool, and then charged against each of those, for example, if they're all working groups. So this is what this model was trying to basically, the two goals of this model. And then it would be, we would like to then actually take this to the next step. We didn't unfortunately have the time to do a great CAD model, but that is definitely on my list. And I just want to end with, and I think this was inspired by, I think the Ocean team on NFTs, what you could then do with this data in providing sort of badges, if you will, NFTs that would allow you to have certain maybe user rights or different statuses. And one of the thoughts here is how we're deciding on who is the praise allocator, who's the praise validator or quantifier, and who's also sitting on the rewards board maybe we could think around mechanisms to use our existing data to have sort of a seamless way to be provided. Very much. Praise be, and glad to be here. Over.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It's an awesome quick presentation.
So we are done with all projects, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we take a deep breath because this was really a ride, so much input, and I think it's a moment now to all switch on your mics and give a round of applause to everyone, because I think we have seen amazing presentations. So a round of applause for all the projects. Yay. Thank you.
Great work, everyone. Great work.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Sean's
No, really exciting work, everyone. Just blown away by the depth and the coverage.
Yeah, so I'll definitely dig deeper into all your documents. Again, thanks for sharing. Thanks for your work.
Yes, thank you. And let's celebrate afterwards. We have a planned beer drink.
Planned beer,
party
not
time.
a plan B.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we can take celebrations to the next call, continue with that. And now I want to share a few final slides just to keep you updated and make sure that you know that we haven't forgotten. Next steps, we have our depot apps. So soon if you are eligible for receiving a successful participation criteria, you receive an email, we'll reach out to you, and you have to collect the NFT. And that is not all. We also have the exceptional contribution NFT. So everyone is eligible for this. If you are a participant, if you are a mentor, you can vote, you can be voted, and you can all live with a special meaning that you made an impact. But we'll talk more about this in the beer session. Just want to remember you that these three are the most important criteria we have for this. So multidisciplinary, be open, and be innovative. Also, we cannot stop reminding you that we have T fundamentals pre-signups are open. You can, let me do a slideshow. You can pre-sign up now, can stay tuned with the course, be involved, and continue conversations with us on that. So I'll give you a few minutes if you want to use the QR code. And if not, I think I can share the links here in the chat. So we also have an article that you can find more information about the program. And that is it. Please stay in touch. We want to see you around. This is a nostalgic picture for you guys, I hope, because it was taken in the kickoff meeting, the first meeting we had, and we really enjoyed every step of the program. And so don't get away so easily. You can just stay tuned with us. I will share a few links in the chat. And I think we are done. Right? Did I forget anything? Does anyone have any questions?
No, that's
okay.
it for the final presentation. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We'll share the recording, of course, on our YouTube channel, and the material in further readings. Keep our community posted on Twitter and all our channels. But now we are closing this official presentations and are heading over to our beers and laid back
memes
and Peter's playlists and a lot of fun. So I hope you'll all join. Patty, I think it's a different Zoom room, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I will drop the link.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
Do I drop it here or in the Discord?
Yeah, wherever.
Just 1 second. Let me find it.
See you all over there.
Okay, see you there, Euro, in the invite.
Okay, see you there in a moment. Check the Discord to find the link and grab your beer.
Here you go. So I'm closing this session so I can open the next one. See you there, everyone.